Oh yeah, so today we're going to talk about sidechaining in Limut, or something approximating sidechaining anyway. I've just got a little bit set up here already. We're going to have some sort of fairly generic sort of house beat to work with, so that's the starting point. So we've got BPM, beats per minute 130. We're going to use the minor scale. We've set the swing to 58. If you want to know what that does, that's the timing of the 16th notes. So if I turn the swing off, then the 16th notes are exactly square, and it's pretty boring. If I set it right up to 2/3, then we get a fully swung beat, which is too much for a house beat. Something in between is just nice, gives it a bit of groove without being over the top. That's the main overall volume. I've set that so hopefully you can hear me speak at the same time. We've got a kick drum here, so if I just isolate that, that's just a classic kick drum. That would sustain was setting the duration of the sound, but we don't need that to start with, so that's a classic kick drum sample. Then we've got some hi-hats and a pan. And we've got a little bit of, and a clap. And we've got a little bit of pan, hi-hats pan to the left, clap pan to the right. So really basic beat. What we're going to look at is sidechaining. So normally sidechaining is something that you do when you want to avoid muddiness in the bass. So for example, let's say we want to have a bass on this. I'm just going to use a PWM patch that I called Profit. I don't know, we'll throw that on, let's say it's 16th notes, and set a low octave so it's a bass. So that's cool. But the issue that we've got is that now that's in the bass, we've got quite a sort of muddiness between that and the kick drum. The kick drum you can't hear as clearly anymore. So what you would classically do, I'm just going to take that out while I talk. So what you would classically do in a digital audio workstation or something like that is you would set up a sidechain compressor, and the compressor would compress or reduce the volume of the bass while the kick drum is playing, and that means that the bass won't obscure the kick drum. We don't have anything quite like that in Limut. It runs on web audio, and sidechaining a compressor is one of the things that's actually not supported by web audio. However, we can do something similar because we can dynamically change the amplitude, the volume of any sound as it's playing. So to show how that works, if I just run this again, you can hear the bass. If I set the bass to cycle between 0 and 1 amplitude, and I tell it to do that 4 times every beat and make that so it updates every frame. So actually that's now, because we're on a quarter beat duration, that's actually cycling in and out of phase with it. So that's a cycle of every 8 beats we're changing the volume up or down. If we go the other way though, we're now changing that cycle every half a beat, and we can do that every quarter beat even, so each of the individual notes gets a cycle, and we can take that even further. So you're getting into something that you'd probably do with a chop or a ring at this point, but the point is you can update the volume every frame. So one of the things we could do is we can actually set it up so that we're changing the volume based on a different player that's playing. So up here we've got the kick drum, the name of the player is PK. So I'm going to do pk.pulse. Pulse is a sort of built-in parameter of the player which updates every frame based on any notes that are playing. I'm just also, probably not necessary in this case, but I'm also going, in case there were multiple notes playing at the same time, I'm just going to pick the first one. Actually, we'll pick the one with the lowest amplitude. So now we're doing an amplitude of 1, but then we're going to subtract the pulse, and the pulse ranges from 0 to 1. So when this bass kick drum is playing, The pulse is going to be up to 1. We're going to do 1 minus 1. It'll take the amplitude out. So this bass will stop playing whenever the kick drum is playing. So I'm now going to run that and you can see the difference. So that's starting to sound much more like the classic sidechain sound. The bass is now dropped out whenever the kick drum is playing. So that's a good start, but one of the things we can do is we might want to apply this to multiple different sounds. So one of the things to do is we can set up a variable. In this case I'm just going to call it sidechain. That contains that value. So now I've got exactly the same thing, but I've got a variable called sidechain, so I don't have to type in this exact expression every time. So if I now want to have like a techno rumble type thing going on, let's say we might have some toms and some other sort of kick drums. We'll make it so it's 7 half beats in length, which means it'll be like a polyrhythm as well, makes it a bit more interesting. So if I play that, I'll just take the bass out for a minute. So we've kind of got the same problem there. We've got a lot of bass from these samples, which are all quite bass heavy. And it kind of obscures the kick a bit, but I can do the same trick. So I can now apply the sidechain to the amplitude. And we now only get the rumble samples when the kick isn't there. One thing to watch out for is if we do something like add some reverb, then the reverb's going to keep going. The reverb's not going to listen to that sidechain. So with the reverb on, you might as well kind of not bother with the sidechain. So if you want to hear the difference, that's with the sidechain on. With the sidechain off, we've now got a lot of bass going on. There's the bass synth, there's the rumble samples, and there's the kick itself, and it's all very muddy. Put the sidechain back on, you've got the main kick really punching through. And what's nice about this is it responds to the kick itself. So if I turn the kick off, then the sidechaining effect stops because there's no longer anything to trigger it. Equally, if I make the kick do something different, like play a little polyrhythm, which of course is one thing you'd never do, but that affects the sidechaining as well. We're now taking more sounds out. Or if I play the kick on every other beat, then again you can hear that the sidechain is affected. So you've got a choice then how far you take this. That's the classic use of sidechaining, to just make sure that the kick really cuts through and you can always hear it. But you can apply sidechaining to whatever other stuff you want. Let's say we're going to add a pad here. So we'll add a sawtooth pad playing a chord, and we'll use the pad envelope, which plays a sort of continuous sound. We'll also set a low pass filter because we're going to get a bit probably going to get a bit annoying with the high pitches, otherwise the high frequencies. Tell you what, let's make it more interesting to listen to while it's going to be there, so we'll stick a flanger on it as well. So that's quite cool, that's all working fine. But one thing we can do if we want to take things further is to stick the sidechain on this pad as well. So that's giving you much more that sort of overcompressed dance music effect where the kick drum just really kicks through absolutely all the other sounds. So one thing you can do to tweak this a bit is you can change the sustain, which is the length that... Okay, that's a bit exciting. Not sure exactly what's happened there, but we will start over and hope it works better. Yeah, so where were we? So yeah, we can change the sustain level. So at the moment, each of these play samples is half a beat long. So if I set sustain to half, that's exactly where we were to begin with. But I can cut that sustain short, and we'll cut the sample short halfway. So let me just show you what that sounds like on its own. So we've now just got the kick. Without the sustain, it's playing the full sample, lasting half a beat. With sustain is a quarter beat, it's cutting the sample short, and we're actually getting a little click on there. It'd be nice to maybe do a nicer envelope feature on that to avoid that click at the end. But that's now cutting the sample shorter. We can cut it even shorter, or basically get just the transient at the beginning. But this is all going to affect the side chaining, so if I put the other sounds back on, with the full half beat kick, the side chain is now hitting for much longer. If I take it down to a quarter note, we're taking much less of the other sounds out on the beat. If I take it right down to an eighth or a 16th, and you can hardly even hear the side chains doing anything. So this is something that you can tweak to get the effect that you want. And of course, you can always do other things as well to push the kick harder, make it cut through. And if you want to see the difference there without the side chain, so it works fine, and the kick is coming through, but it loses a bit of that rhythmic sort of punch that you want from dance music. If you want to hear it again without the side chain on the pad. So one nice thing that you can do is have maybe a side chain on the pad, but then maybe pick just one lead instrument to cut through and not be side chained. So I'm going to use a sort of FM glass bell sort of sound, and we'll just make up something for it to play. Give it a bit of reverb so it's got a bit of go to it. Tell you what, we'll stick a bit of chorus on, that's always nice. So we've now got, because the lead instrument here is in a higher register, it's a higher octave, we've now got side chaining on everything down the bottom, and then the high frequencies for the lead instrument, we don't have the side chaining at all. If we were to stick the side chaining on here, it works, but it's just a bit, it just thins out that lead instrument too much, partly because it's playing on every beat. But it's quite a nice effect to take everything, including the mids, out with the side chain, and then leave the lead instrument playing. So you can do a few things there. Obviously you can do anything you'd normally do, like let's have a little rhythmic break. Maybe we'll drop the pad back in. Then maybe we'll have a little drop. We can also stick some visuals on this. Let's Cal is the kaleidoscope. Let's stick some contrast on, make it a bit more interesting. And let's do, I don't know, let's have the zoom. And we can use the side chain even on the visuals, or use the variable. So we've now got a zoom of 1 plus whatever the side chain's doing. So normally side chain is 1. Sorry, there we go. So normally side chain has a value of 1. We're doing 1 plus 1 here, so that's zoomed in by a factor of 2. But whenever the bass plays, we come back out to a 1 plus 0, gives us a zoom of 1. And then that that drives through. But again, that's responding to the kick, so if I stop the kick, then all the sidechaining stops and the visual effect stops. So you get the idea, you can play around with things quite a bit there. And just to give a final idea again, if we take the sidechaining out, then everything's still playing, but the whole thing sounds a bit flat, and we've lost that dance music punch. Put the sidechain back in. Kicking. Awesome.